Hi everyone, this is Joanne Smith with Salt Lake Medium Murder and Mysteries. I am a psychic medium. A psychic actually can see some things into the future. A medium can channel people that have passed from this physical world. I started a Facebook page called Salt Lake Medium Murder and Mysteries just recently because my heart just breaks for people that have no closure on somebody's passing, where somebody has been taken maybe from this physical world at the hands of another person. So my wishes for starting the page was about, the Facebook page was about trying to share people's information, and maybe if we can get, even though some of the people have had media coverage also for quite some time, that's okay, because maybe somebody out there, I believe people know something. I believe people may have some pieces and like a puzzle of information to share with other people, and I believe that is what might bring a case to closure for a family member. So that's my passion. That's why I wanted to start this the podcast, or excuse me, the YouTube channel that we are doing. And so that's where I'm at. This is episode 2 of Salt Lake Medium Murder and Mysteries, and I have Meridee McFalls with me, and thank you for coming and joining us.
Hey, thank you for having us.
Well, and so I wanted to make sure everybody could hear, and so we want to make sure we use our speakers on here, because sometimes you might have some information that can lead to getting that information over to somebody so that there can be some closure, like I said, in a case. And so this is regarding Jerry Sr. and Susan McFalls, and they went missing. Meridee, it's her in-laws. Her husband's name is Jerry also, Jerry Jr. And so anyway, what happened is on January 11th, 2018, they actually went missing. Well, that was the last time that somebody actually heard from them. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the last time that we had heard from them. I got a text from Mom about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then there was one more phone call made about 3:30, and then phones went silent from there forward.
Okay, and with that, and I'm so sorry for your loss. This has been a case that my sister's name is Jane, and my sister and I have been concerned about this case for quite some time. This is a couple that both aged 62 years of age, correct,
yes,
at the time missing, and that they went missing, and they were just going into retirement age. So they had lived a life of hard work and dedication, and they were just going into retirement age. This is about a double murder, and the case, the bodies were recovered, but they were both identified, and we'll go into that just a little bit. They were both finally identified. It took a while for that. And then what's happened from there is there's still no leads that are big enough leads on the case to have somebody brought to to bring justice to the case. So, and there is a Facebook page that you guys created.
Yes,
correct?
It's called Justice for Susan and Jerry McFalls.
Okay, so everybody on here, please like and share the YouTube, and let's share this. And you can find update information on that, the Facebook page for them. And so what I'd like to do is kind of just go back to the date that I was first talking about. They have, so Jerry and Susan, they have a home here in Utah, in West Jordan area, correct? And then they also bought a retirement place for them down in Littlefield, Arizona, which is really close to Mesquite, Nevada. So, and to get there, you drive through St. George area on I-15 from Salt Lake area. You would drive through there, and you'd go through what's called the Gorge. So the people that are not familiar with that, you would go through the Gorge, and just shortly after that, probably 20 minutes or something like that. Anyway, you would get to the Little Falls where you would turn off to go to their home on there. So they went down there. So just explain to me, I'll just let you kind of share to our viewers what happened. They were down there for a little while for Christmas time, correct?
Yeah, they went down in November, actually, and hadn't returned home until recently. They went down to just get away, to do their thing, work on their property, be down in the warmth while it was cold up here. The only reason they were actually coming home in January was Grandma had some doctor's appointments. There was some business they had to take care of up here with court appointments and stuff like that. But that was their home away from home. They were looking at remodeling the house here in West Jordan and finally selling it. It's a property that they've owned. Gosh, I don't think Jerry was born there, but their whole lives had lived in West Jordan, and they worked hard and found their retirement place, and they loved it down there. It was away from everybody.
And they kind of like to be alone a little bit more, right? So they were a couple that just kind of wanted to spend time together with their dogs, which were their children. Okay, so they enjoyed their dogs, and then so you had your son had just barely spent some Christmas time with them, and then he came back home.
Yep, my youngest son would go down to Christmas, the day after Christmas, would wake up, jump on the shuttle bus, and go down and spend his whole Christmas break down with Grandma and Grandpa for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years prior to their disappearance. And it was the highlight of his Christmas vacation. He didn't care about all the presents he just got. He got to go down and what he calls grandmanizing. Grandma would make him T-bone steaks and get his favorite blueberries and just pamper the kid, because it was just him and Grandma and Grandpa down there having fun.
Kind of nice to be a little bit spoiled.
Yeah.
Okay. So the reason, this did go on the news. It did go worldwide, I believe.
It did.
So worldwide on here, and the Moab County Sheriff's Department. We will also give you that number here at the end. If you have any information, please contact them and give them information regarding this case. No matter big or small, they are taking information on this case. So the detectives got involved right away. So we're going to back this up into January. So when you last talked to them,
So I had just started a new job. We were kind of crazily. We had just moved into a house. We kind of had our own agendas there. I had heard from Mom on January 11th, but it wasn't anything unusual. Actually, she had texted me asking about a dog bed that I had received for my sister for Christmas, and asked me where I got it. And fast forward to the following Saturday, my husband and I finally get a date night, and we're excited, ready to go out the door, finally get to see each other. And he says, "I have a strange question for you. Have you heard from my parents lately?" And it was like, that's funny you say strange question, because she texted me last week asking me where I got the dog beds that Chantal got us for Christmas. We all have I have dachshunds, and they have 2 dachshunds, and it's a little burrow bed. And he says, "Well, that's because we were talking about it when I was down there for Christmas. She wanted one for her dogs." And I said, "Well, she said she was going to be home on Sunday. That was this week, so they should be here in Salt Lake somewhere. Why?" And he says, "I've been trying all week, and what's weird is it just goes to voicemail wire. I bought it for the first few days because I knew she had appointments and stuff going on, and Mom's not the best with technology. She was terrible at answering her cell phone.
I'm not either. my phone. But so sometimes, so this was this out of the normal for you, calling them and then not calling back for a few days?
Yeah, it was pretty normal. The day of the
okay.
texting, she had texted me at 10 o'clock in the morning and asked me where I got the thing. I immediately text back, because I have my phone with me, and say she got it at Walgreens. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon is when I got the text back saying, "Okay, great, we're coming home on Sunday, love you, see you then." And so that was kind of normal mom gap in texting. Being a daughter-in-law, it's not like I called her all the time. She wasn't my mother, Jerry talked to her all the time while he was out doing deliveries, and they'd have chit-chats. She loved to sit and listen to him, customer service people, and cheer him on through his day.
And so because there was a few days that nobody, there was no phone messages from them or nobody calling.
Right.
You guys
Jerry had tried calling, and it just went straight to voicemail.
Okay.
So
and then you guys you called and had like a welfare check.
Yes. So we go to dinner that night, and I said, "Well, I'll shoot a text to Mom and see if maybe you're in trouble and we don't know it." I have no idea why. But it's 8:30, 9 o'clock as we're finally getting to go on our date night. I said, "I'm assuming they're probably in bed. I'll shoot them a text. If they don't respond to us by morning, I'll be fine." Who thinks your parents would just go missing all of a sudden, you know. We'll find him in the morning. I want to go on my date night. I mean, selfish of me maybe, but it was my date night. I hadn't had one for a while. And so,
and you didn't know anything was...
I didn't know anything was wrong. I didn't have reason to think
okay.
that something would be drastically wrong. It just, Mom wasn't answering her calls again. And we knew she had some appointments, so it wasn't that big of a concern. When we got up Sunday morning, Mom hadn't returned my calls. We called her cell phone, Dad's cell phone, called every number we possibly knew, reached out to Jerry Sr.'s sister to see the last time she had talked to her, cousins, nieces, anybody we could think of, to see when the last time anybody had talked to him. It sounded like the last time anybody had talked to her was me. At the time we didn't know, but that was the last communication we could find. So I said, well, let's call Mojave County. Jerry's ready to jump in the truck and drive down to Arizona, and I'm like, we are not driving 5 hours.
Which is, I was just going to say, for everybody that doesn't know, it's about a 5 hour drive. And so you called the sheriff's office.
Called the sheriff's office and asked him to go do a well check. And it took them a little bit to get out there and respond because their county's pretty big out there. The sheriff called me back, and Deputy Davis called and said, okay, so help me here. I'm walking onto the property. Describe the vehicles that should be here if they're still here. So we went through all the vehicles, and he's like, all the vehicles are here. And I'm just going to describe to you as I walk in. Now, I've already been in, but kind of describe to you what's going on here. So as I walk up on the deck, the dogs come running out the doggy door. The front door is open, but the screen door has a little doggy door in it. And I'm greeted by the dogs. And that was the first thing that I knew Mom and Dad weren't there. If we were having this conversation, that was a problem. Mom took her dogs everywhere with her. Her little dachshund is a mini dachshund. She would ride with her in her purse, go to the buffet, she'd hide. I mean, just the dog went everywhere with her. They would never leave the dog alone.
The detective actually walked in the house and then called you back and said, this is how it was. Okay.
Right.
So
he's trying to describe it to me. He knew that we'd been trying their cell phone. He says, I'm assuming the cell phone that you're trying is the one that's sitting right here on the counter. It's dead. I'm looking at the kitchen table and I see your mom's purse. I see everything looks pretty normal. They're just not here. I don't see any signs of trauma.
And there was no sign of any robbery either.
No. So, the TV was on. Dad's music was still playing in the garage.
And their personal items, their purse, and things were there.
For the first time in my life, I almost believed in aliens. They just disappeared. There was it didn't sound to us like there was any sign of them. So Jerry and I frantically packed a bag, jumped in the truck, and drove down to Littlefield to see for ourselves.
And such a hard time. And when something like that happens, we all, agonize. A minute turns into an hour.
Oh, and, the longest drive ever.
It would be very, he's very close, Jerry's very close with his father. Now, the McFalls do have 2 children. There's a son and a daughter. Mm-hmm. And but they do have 2 children. So you guys, you got down there, and then the police explained what they found, but no, there was no clue of where Jerry and Susan were.
Right. So they walked Jerry in the house and kind of had him take a look around because
Jerry Jr.
Jerry Jr. Yeah, my husband.
Okay.
So when my husband had gone down to pick up my son from Jerry and Susan's house over that Christmas break. So he had been down there up until I think it was January 4th, whatever that Tuesday was, right after New Year's, is when they came home. So they had him kind of walk around and see if they could see any obvious signs of something missing. All of their guns were there. Mom still had money in her purse. It just looked like
no sign of robbery.
Yeah.
I know I have personally talked to the sheriff, and this was quite a while later. But so during that period of time, then you started getting out. Okay, they're missing. This is it's a missing persons. And then you guys started. I'm not sure exactly your time frame on there. When you actually started, people you gathered, you actually stayed down at their home.
We did. We stayed there for 2 weeks.
Okay.
They wouldn't let us stay on the property, obviously, the first night. We got done at the property at like 1 o'clock in the morning, locked the property up with the sheriffs. they made us go stay in a hotel and told us they'd have search and rescue back out in the morning. And so I went back to the hotel and went to bed, and I'm up at 5 o'clock in the morning going, okay, the sun's coming up. When are we starting search and rescue? Where's these phone calls? What's going on? By 9 o'clock, we still hadn't heard from the police. So I said to my husband, I can't stay in these four walls anymore and not feel like we're not helping search for your parents. We know we can't go on the property. Let's at least go look because there's really no houses past theirs. So there's tons of desert.
And it is a desert area. There's a lot of there's dirt roads going up to their home.
Mm-hmm.
It is a desert area, not with not a lot of homes right immediately around it.
Mm-hmm.
And so this went on for quite some time, where you guys were meeting, getting together. It was a big search effort.
Yeah.
That has been that was constantly on the news, and it was also on the Facebook page, so you guys were keeping people up to date. A lot of people joined in on the search.
Right.
And
I hit my
hopefully
personal.
that it was search and rescue.
I hit my personal Facebook page. I think it was like day 3 because they had the property kept. Basically, once they were done processing the scene of the house, they said, "Okay, here's the keys back to their property. We've done our research here. Call out the search dogs. Do whatever you want. We're going to go back to Kingman and work on the case because all the detectives and the sheriff's office is located in Kingman, which is 3 hours away from or 2.5 hours away.
And that's Kingman, Arizona.
Kingman, Arizona.
So, and they were there. But many people around, and people drove from Salt Lake too to go down and help search, and from all over. And I know this, it was a big search, and they would go out for miles and miles. I mean, just going everywhere, just trying to find, turning up rocks, dirt, everything with that. So I know that, I will just say, I'm sure that you guys were inundated with so many people calling, trying to say, hey, I'm getting something, or, and I know that there's been a lot of psychics and mediums on the case, and there's been a lot of things. I didn't care what you believed in.
Yeah, you got a psychic wolf, bring him to me. Whatever it took to find Mom and Dad, we reached out to anybody and everybody we could. I posted on all kinds of pages. I got sick of it being inundating on my page. Therefore we created Mom and Dad's page right shortly after, so it was going to a page rather than my personal. But I've always personally been the one to respond to all the questions and have personally taken.
And I remember I had messaged Jerry Jr. And so it was February 5th of 2018, because I had just a small message. Sometimes you just get small messages, sometimes they're larger ones. You just never know what might be of assistance. But I actually felt like, I'm just going to say, I actually knew that Susan had passed. I had her energy with me. I didn't know either of Jerry's parents before I never had met them before, but I knew that she was letting me know that the clock had stopped. And so I messaged him. He did get back with me, but I'm sure, like everybody else, if you're getting messages from so many people, it's kind of like, okay, and so that kind of, which was a normal response, I think, too, from him, because there was not a whole lot of things. I mean, he was very kind and very polite, and then we were messaging each other, and you guys, the searches were long days, long hours, and then it also got into the heat of the summer too, where it was very warm for people. My sister and I had an event down in Mesquite area, and my sister and my brother-in-law and I, the next day after that, came and we met with you at Jerry and Susan's home.
Yes, I was so thankful. I had somebody knew Joanne was going to. I didn't even know who Joanne was. Somebody was telling me about the event and knew we were coming down for searching that weekend, and said, you should hurry up and get down here because our event's Friday night. I was like, that's going to be cutting it close. We couldn't quite make it to your event. I'm so sorry. But she was so
you were
thankful.
You were doing a lot. But we went there, and some interesting things happened. So the only thing I want to say is a couple of things, because a medium doesn't always get everything. There would be no open cold cases, right? So if people got everything, so it was very strong. So I had stayed in St. George after the show, and then the next day we drove up through the gorge again, which is a beautiful drive through there. My sister and her husband were in their car following me, and my GPS quit. quit the minute I started driving into the gorge, which had their address programmed in it, and it just stopped working, and I just felt spirit with me. And driving through the canyon, I felt spirit. And when we got through, I pulled over, and on the freeway, I pulled over after we got through the gorge, because the gorge is very slim roads. You don't want to get out there. I did a couple of times after that, though, I will say, because Spirit was just messaging, kind of let me know, just there were some areas. But anyway, we got through, and I go running back to my brother-in-law's vehicle, and he says, "What are you doing? Get in your car." And I said, "Well, you know, I have no GPS now, so the spirits are messing with it." And so I said, "You have to put their address in your phone or in your car." And so then I followed them out to the house, and we were met with you out there, and then we walked through the home.
Right.
And there were a lot of people that came back they were just coming back from the search. Even though it was early, they had gone out very early because it was warm. And there was a lot of people there, a lot of things, but we walked through the house, and I'll never forget that. It was, you could feel the energy of...
Oh, absolutely. One of the guys walked in and wanted to know, where was Mom's cell phone when the police came in? And Joanne answered the question, and I just looked at her and was like, and she turns around and looks at me and is like, "Oh, I probably shouldn't have answered that." And I'm like, "You pointed to the exact spot the cell phone was sitting." And she just took this stance that was totally Susan. She's like, I don't know why I'm standing like that. And it was just, you looked like Susan for just a minute.
And it is a little bit different when somebody starts watching that. But when we walked in the house, the very first thing I noticed is when we were in the front room looking in the kitchen, I said to my sister, "Look at that, the clock is stopped." So the clock was stopped in the kitchen, and then as we walked through the house, so then I explained to you that it was and myself. So to me, spirits vibrate at a level. To me, we're all energy. And I won't stay too much on all this, but I just want to say there were some things that we were getting. Not that it will solve a case, but there were things of spirit letting us know that they were near. And I mentioned to Meridee, I pulled out my cell phone, and my cell phone would refuse to work there. My sister's cell phone worked. Your cell phone worked. You went and got Jerry's cell phone, because I said on his Facebook page, I messaged him back in February about the clock. And this was about April-ish of 2018, and April, May-ish of 2018. And so anyway, she went and got his phone, and there was the message. We walked through the house, and there were 5 clocks that were stopped at within 2 minutes of the time.
And the clocks had worked the whole time. Well, as far as I know, at least the one in the kitchen that I used for timing while we were down there, and it was nowhere near the time that we were conversing either. Yeah, I mean, it was... I couldn't believe it. I had to go grab my husband's cell phone. I'm like, "You had a message from this lady that actually knows something? We could have got answers so long ago." He's like,
well, and like I said, and my heart just bleeds for the family and also for, Jerry and Susan deserve justice. They were brutally murdered, so they deserve justice. And walking through the house, and then afterwards, and then I just stood by the kitchen clock. I was just under it, and then all of a sudden it started working. Yeah. That is a sign from Spirit that they're around and that they know things. And spirits do like to talk, and just hoping that more things are going to be said. Then there was a couple of other things, and I'll just keep that private, because that's the best thing to do, because that was a little bit more detailed information from that. But when we were there, then we walked through the house, and actually there was an incident, if that's okay to bring it up. There was an incident with, they had bought the home there was a neighbor that was living in the home at the time when they bought it.
So when they bought the house, they basically bought it sight unseen. Jerry Sr.'s sister has a piece of property in the neighborhood, if you will, kind of by there, and they wanted their own. They drove past one day, saw the for sale sign, reached out to the realtor, met with the realtor, paid him. The guy's like, "You don't even want to see the house?" They're like, "We're retiring here anyway. We're going to turn it into our own. We'll do our own thing." Got the keys from the guy and went to walk in the house, and the neighbor was squatting in the house.
He was
they had to call. Yeah, he was living there. So they had to call the sheriffs and have him removed. And really, from that day forward, there was some confrontation with him. They would leave to come back to Salt Lake to their home here. The neighbor would shoot out their windows. There was a street light owned by the city. Every time they'd have the light bulb changed, he would shoot it out. I think,
and he had owned that home previously, correct? Or
that's
do you
what,
think?
that's what we
okay,
don't
they're not
know.
sure?
Is
Okay.
the home had sat vacant for quite a while, and it was our understanding that supposedly he was living there, paying the rent. Whoever he was paying the rent to wasn't paying them. I don't know exactly.
Okay.
We get conflicting stories still to this day. We just know. I think it was 2012 that Mom and Dad bought the property. So I mean, this was sometime before they disappeared. They had several incidences with the neighbor up until
And they were reported actually to the police.
Yes.
With some of the incidences, and so with me, I'm not laying blame on anybody, nor
No,
are you.
absolutely not.
But there were some incidences between Jerry and Susan with the neighbor, and actually at one point there was a gunshot, a BB gun,
Mhm.
correct? That Jerry Senior.
Mom and Dad were going to take Thanksgiving dinner to one of the senior neighbors in the neighborhood. And when you're driving around down there, they have a Can-Am, which is like a side-by-side four-wheeler type vehicle. They jump in the vehicle, driving down the driveway that kind of lines the two properties between them and their neighbor. Mom dropped, I think it was her sunglasses, dropped something. Dad stops the Can-Am, Mom bends over to pick it up, and Dad says, "Oh my gosh, I've been shot." And Mom's like, "You've been shot? No, you haven't, you're crazy." And he picked up a shirt and he had a shot. Mom and Dad's version of the story was they saw a tail sign of him running in the house. They called the sheriff's office, the sheriff comes out. His wife had taken the charges, saying that the gun had accidentally discharged from the kitchen window, and that's what had shot Dad. That case was just getting to go to trial. Actually, it was supposed to go to trial the week after they disappeared. They had, I think, 2 or 3 postponements of that case due to lawyer-court conflicts, so it hadn't gone to trial yet when they disappeared.
Okay. And so that, and I know that the police have done their job where they've investigated things, and and there's still no actual leads on this case. Is that correct?
Yeah, for the most part, it's bits and pieces of information, but nothing. Nobody's been arrested yet.
Okay.
We're still looking into it. The police were aware of all those things. They actually, the last thing my husband and I wanted to do was blame anybody. We didn't know. Our job was to find them, and has been our focus to find them up until they were found. But
Well, and thank goodness that happened. So there was, there were 2 remains of people that were located just prior to going into the gorge area. So when you go from St. George to Littlefield, Arizona, where they were living, so just heading towards that way, there was a shallow grave site that their remains were found in. So at first they were just, as when you find remains, it's just 2 remains were found, and they were anticipating they may be Susan and Jerry's, correct?
yes. So we didn't find out. So they were found. So this lovely couple was on their first retirement trip. They had just barely retired, found a camping spot, went out for a walk. First thing in the morning when they had got there, they stumbled across some remains on top of the dirt about a half a mile away from their actual burial site, from our understanding. I was able to thank them for. Anybody could have easily just kept going about their day, and we found so many weird things in the desert. You don't know necessarily what to call it.
A lot of heavy rains and stuff, so water kind of washes away some things.
Yeah, right before they were found, there was some flooding down in that area.
I was just going to say, there was a lot of rain, there was a lot of things going on, but it was a very shallow kind of a grave that they were buried in there. So, and there is wildlife and things out there. And so that was on October 18th of 2018 that 2 remains were located. They did identify Susan through medical records and things like that.
Yeah, Mom had a knee replacement, so they were able to match her serial number from her knee replacement with her medical records and identify her. Dad was your typical stubborn male that didn't go to the doctor unless he had to, and there was no significant surgeries that he had, or even, dental work, a tooth pulled here and there. There wasn't, back then there's not dental work like there is today, where you do all these 360 stuff for much cheaper of your whole dental mouth. So
it was harder to identify the second. So, and her remains were identified on, so they, October 18th of 2018, and then just a short time later, she was identified. So November 1st of 2018. And then Jerry's did take quite a while longer.
Quite a while. We didn't find out until February.
Or was it
January?
Okay, it was January. Okay, so of 2020. So, and I was for some reason I was thinking January, but it might be February of 2020, because it does take a while to. I know that the offices were trying to do their very best, but there wasn't a lot to go on, so it takes a while with the forensics and that. So you do have both of them.
Yes.
The remains that you will. Do probably a celebration of life.
We will, and then COVID hit. So
and then COVID hit, yes.
We couldn't do mass gatherings, and we've just kind of been waiting till we can. There's definitely more than 25 or 50 people that have been following this story for so long that we'd like to be able to do what they deserve, a big celebration of life. We're just waiting for the things to open up so that we can do those.
And honor them in a way. And what I want to say is I'm just so grateful that you took the time out of your day to come here. I know my sister and her husband are just sitting right across from us over here, and because this is a case that my sister has a big heart, and she really, she just felt something instantly, as with many of us, knowing that they're a couple that worked hard, wanted to get to retirement, and hopefully somebody will be able to share something. Hopefully you'll know something, and hopefully you'll want to share that. The police officers are taking any kind of leads on the case here, and that's Mojave County Sheriff's Office, and they work diligently for a long period of time on this. And I always believe that somebody knows something, or multiple people know something. And to me, it's about, if somebody has said something to you, no matter how small of the information maybe you think it is, maybe it's a big piece of the puzzle. So it's like putting pieces of puzzles back together again. I am no detective. I am no police officer. I'm just a person that cares about people. I'm a person that has watched people go through years of not having any closure with that. I know it brought some sense of peace when the remains were discovered, and when the first remain was identified as Susan. That brought you some closure, some comfort. There was frustration too that it took a while to identify Jerry, and I know that forensics, it does take a while. I'm grateful the remains were found. There's a lot of people that don't get to have that
absolutely.
Closure with with things with family. But if you could say anything to, is there something that you would like to say to somebody, if they know anything, or if they've heard of anything, and that person can remain anonymous. So, know that you can call and I'm going to give you that number also here, but I didn't know if you had something that you'd like to.
Really just, we're a family suffering without closure. If you know somebody who has some kind of information that could come forward and help put this to rest. This has been a very long 2.5 years. It's been 860 days today since we found out they were missing. And so it has been a long time, and the slightest thing, maybe you think your tip went unheard in the beginning. We had some frustrations in the beginning. If you feel like your tip went unheard or didn't get answered or properly looked into, now's the time to maybe revisit those tips with Mojave County and let them know what you know. Somebody knows something. We've been saying that since day one. We were fortunate enough to be able to bring them home, and forever grateful for the Facebook shares, for the friends following us, Joanne's help. So many psychics helps, whether they were good tips or not. There's some that are not as good as you, but
Well, I think everybody can contribute. It doesn't mean that we're going to
Right.
help solve something. Sometimes, spirits do talk and they do say something. And also, I was just going to say, wasn't there a vehicle that was of interest in the case?
So in the very, very beginning, on the first few days that they were doing searching, one of the neighbors had suggested that they had seen Jerry and Susan in a silver, it was a gray SUV, it was a gray sedan when they first asked us about it. They thought there was going to be this missing vehicle. Now, my husband and Jerry Sr. owned a mechanic shop for 25 years. That's all they've taught their whole entire life is cars. When Dad bought the little white Ford Ranger for $150, he picked up the phone and called Jerry. Anytime they bought anything vehicle-wise, it was discussed between my husband and Jerry. So I think there was also a tip that called in that they were found at the homeless shelter. I mean,
and the police are very used to that. Yes, they do get a lot of calls, and and bless our police officers.
Oh yeah.
For the work that they do. But if anybody, like I said, knows anything on this case, and it's the Jerry and Susan McFalls, it's McFalls, and they're out of Utah. Their remains were discovered. They were discovered on the Utah-Arizona border. So going into the gorge, that's the Utah-Arizona border. If somebody saw anything around that time in January of 2018 when they went missing, so that would be probably somewhere around January
11th,
12th, 13th, somewhere in that area. Please feel free to, let me just give you the number for Mojave County Sheriff's, and that's actually in Arizona. Two different numbers here. There's an 800 number, 800-522-4312, or 928-753-0753. So 928-753-0753. And with this with this YouTube channel that we're doing, like I said, we just hope that maybe people will share. It's been on the news media, big news media has interviewed you. They've done a lot of news coverage on this. And so let's just keep the word out. So part of it is sometimes, the identities of the victims were found and they were located. So let's just keep this case going further until we get some closure and justice for Susan and Jerry McFalls. And like I said, just go ahead and visit their Facebook page. So Justice for Susan, or Justice for Jerry and Susan McFalls?
Susan and Jerry.
Or Susan and Jerry McFalls. Okay, Justice for Susan and Jerry McFalls. And, you can follow up on the story on there. And also, if you have any tips, like I said, please feel free. The police are even taken anonymous, and they will go through any kind of leads that they feel like they will have on that. And hopefully, like I said, somebody will talk. Because I learned something real important from a detective previously on one of the YouTube channels. So, like I said, I'm not a detective and I'm not a police officer. But he said something very important that I will never forget. They're trained in a lot of different areas and ways, but just because somebody may know something and there may be a relationship that they're in at the time when something happens to somebody else, and they may be nervous to talk and they may be nervous to come forward, but as time goes by, relationships change and maybe people are not in those kind of relationships. So sometimes somebody may want to hold something kind of secret because they're a little nervous with things, but those relationships sometimes change. So I just want to kind of put that out there. I hope that makes sense with everybody, because sometimes it gets to a point, maybe somebody shared something with you and maybe they're not part of your life anymore, and maybe this is a time for you to talk and connect with people so that this family can have some justice in this case. So I want to thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, I appreciate it. And Meridee has been the spokesperson for the family during this ordeal that they've gone through. And believe me, they do know. When I have talked to her, she always lets me know the dates that it's been, so they do know the dates, because families live on dates. They go day by day by day, okay? We are grateful that their remains were found. in this horrific case, that there's some kind of a piece of closure that they can have, but nobody will rest until justice is served on this case. So thank you for joining us on Salt Lake Medium Murder and Mysteries, and we hope that you will share this YouTube channel with other people, and we hope that somebody knows something. So thank you so much.